All right. So for everyone, I know we had a few people asking in the chat. That was Song for Sam by our featured guest speaker, ONDRE PIVEC. So feel free to check that out on Spotify. So yeah, I'm gonna get started. I know we have a couple more folks joining us, but for those joining us on YouTube Live and in the Zoom, just want to introduce this portion. This is the Berklee City Music Summer Artist Series, and we're really excited to have our first guest speaker of the 2020 summer program, ONDRE PIVEC. And I know a lot of the students, we saw you yesterday and we introduced ourselves to each other during the orientation. But again, I'm Samantha. I'm with Berklee City Music. I'm going to be hosting and doing a Q&A with Andre during this time. And for those of us who are not within the Zoom or in the Berklee Aspire program, just a little bit about what we just started this week. We just started the Berklee Aspire 5-week intensive program. We have over 60 City Music Summer Scholars with us this summer in the program from our network sites across the US and Canada. This is our first time doing this series virtually. We've done it for years, and then, we're definitely our first time doing the summer program virtually, but we're really excited to all be together. And this is our first official week of our summer programming. The kids that we have with us this summer are super gifted and are bringing such a range of talent and ability to the table this summer. And the City Music Summer Series really provides the opportunity to connect them with industry professionals and also give our community members kind of a taste of what the Berklee City Music experience is and hear from these experts as well. So I'm just going to let a couple folks into our Zoom. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and we will get into the introduction portion. All right. Awesome. So today, like I said, we have a very special guest by the name of ONDRE PIVEC, ONDRE J. PIVEC. I know all of the students will be really excited to hear about his journey in the industry and how he's been adapting during this time as a working producer and musician and director and kind of a jack of all trades. So just a little bit about who ONDRE is. He's a Grammy-winning celebrated keyboardist, composer, recording artist, and band leader from the Czech Republic. Though he's based in Brooklyn, ONDRE has been touring Europe and the UK as a member of the live band for Grammy-winning jazz singer Gregory Porter, having also recorded with Porter in New York on the latter's 2016 Take Me to the Alley. ONDRE has also performed at the Glastonbury and North Sea Jazz, an opening slot with Andra Day for R&B star Tony Braxton, performance with the legendary hip-hop group Wu-Tang Clan, performing a Janet Jackson tribute at the 2018 BMI Hip Hop Awards, and a tour in front of a total of 70K people as a keyboardist for French pop star Io. At home in Brooklyn, ONDRE plays regularly at New York City's renowned Greater Allen Cathedral. He's also the keyboardist and music director for a swinging, soulful, hybrid R&B jazz pop band, the Kennedy Administration, that has been touring Europe in the past year and recently opened for 2 shows of the legendary Sir Elton John. So without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce ONDRE and give you guys a chance to ask him questions, and we're going to learn a little bit about his experience. So ONDRE, hop on.
You could have kept talking. I mean, that sounded so good. You were just saying all these great things.
I could keep going.
Thank you for having me. Hi, guys. I'm ONDRE. All those things are true, even though when you put them in, all together, it sounds almost unbelievable, at least to me.
Yeah.
I have been blessed with what I consider a nice career. And especially because I come from a place that is very small. I come from the Czech Republic, which is a small country in Eastern Europe. And all of those names that you mentioned in the introduction, those were my heroes or people that I've always looked up to, especially growing up, being a teenager and having played music. This seemed, it still seems kind of unbelievable. So a little bit about my journey in music. I started playing piano at the age of 3. There was this after school piano teacher, very ambitious. She was going around kindergartens and picking out talented kids, 5 years and up, because that's when you can start the after school, the official after school classical piano programs here. And she tested out all the kids in the kindergarten where I went, and then they were like, "Hey, we have this 3-year-old. He's super annoying, banging on stuff all the time, singing things. Try him out." She was like, "Well, I'm not really. I don't need a 3-year-old. We need 5 and up because that's when the classes start." And they said, no, no, you got to try them out. And so she tried me out. You know, I repeated all the rhythms, sang everything back, and she was like, okay, I got to take you. So I started 2 years early and played classical music. Hated every bit of it because I saw no I just didn't know why I had to play other people's music. It was not in my heart. It's not to say that classical music is wonderful. It's just it was just never really for me. So fast forward at the age of maybe 12, 13, I stopped doing it, and it, for a minute, I didn't even think I was going to be into music at all. Then, at, around 18, right before I graduated high school, um, this kind of well-known jazz guitar player over here in Prague, he had an organ trio with an Italian organ player who left, had to go back to Italy, so he needed an organ player, and I had a keyboard that had that sound. I had the first Nord Electro, and someone called him and said, "Hey, this dude has the sound. Why don't you call him?" So he called me, and I had to. Of course, I didn't know how to play organ, especially in the trio situation where you have to play your own bass and all that. But I had to. This forced me to kind of learn it because it was either I learn it well enough to stay in that trio, or he calls someone else. So I did it. I learned he had an album and I learned the whole album. It was super hard because it's very hard for coordination if you want to play left hand bass and right hand chords and solos and stuff like that. So I did that, and that started my journey as a professional musician. Fast forward again, I started my own band. Became moderately successful here in the Czech Republic because it was a novelty for everybody. I was a young dude playing jazz, playing an instrument that has no tradition here. The Hammond organ has no tradition in Eastern Europe. Um, so I did develop somewhat of a nice career here, which is why it freaked everybody out when I said, "Okay, I got to pack up and move to New York," which
Right.
happened 11 years ago. Everybody said, "Why are you doing it? Everything is going so well." I had this quartet. We started traveling the world out of the Czech Republic, which that in itself was amazing. And I was like, well, you know what? I just want to try it. I just want to, throw myself against the wall and see what happens. And um, man, was that a shock? I moved to New York, and all of a sudden, I realized all those things. It's like a reality check. All of a sudden, especially if you come from a place. I don't know how many foreigners we have on this Zoom call today, but um, especially if you come from a place where there's no tradition in this type of music. I was playing mainly straight ahead jazz and like groovy stuff and kind of post bop type of thing. Um, it was a reality check because I realized I didn't know how to play at all, and I had no friends, let alone a girlfriend. It's just nothing. So, first 2 years in New York, I was just sad, and anywhere I was able to sit in, I sucked. It was awful, and the only reason why I kind of lasted throughout the first 2 years was that I couldn't see myself coming back and just being the dude that kind of didn't make it in New York. That idea was just seemed so awful to me that I'd rather stay. And I had no money, I had nothing, no gigs, no equipment, and I just kind of had to push through it. So I started coming to the jam sessions, writing down the standards that cats were playing and calling that I didn't know. And I would go home I mean, mind you, first thing I had to learn how to speak English well enough to be able to communicate with people.
Right. On top of
Because
yeah.
yeah, because my English kind of sucked. And in New York, you have so many accents all of a sudden.
Mhm.
So you have to you have to be able to communicate. If you want to play with people, they need to take you seriously. And
Right.
if you can't express yourself, I know a lot of people, a lot of foreigners that are like 40 that still can't really speak it. The language reduces their personalities to because they can't really express themselves fully. So that was the task number one. I had to learn how to speak the language, which I did from television. I figured, I thought about have there been any are there any TV shows that formed me as a? Are there any American TV shows that partially formed me as a person in the Czech Republic? And I found two. It was MASH,
Wow.
and it was House, the hospital show. It was
Yeah,
a lot of language humor, a lot of you know,
might be a throwback for some of our some of our students.
of
They're like,
course, yeah, of course. But thankfully, that's a lot of material. House, that's like 9 seasons, and MASH, that was like 24 seasons. So I bought all of it. I just kept watching it all night, basically until like 3, 4 in the morning. And anytime I didn't understand a thing, I would pause it, Google the expression, try to memorize it, and keep going. And before you knew it, within like a year, I kind of had it to a point. Of course, there's limits to it, but I can express myself. I'm the same person in my native language as I am in English. And this experience helped me later on in my musical career, my musical journey, because I realized this, how to me at least, it seems like it's a language. It's a tool that you use to tell stories, express things, express emotions, generate emotions. And um, for me, learning music, especially music that is not your own, that doesn't come from your own culture, it's like learning a language. You just need to kind of, you almost need to learn why the music sounds the way it does. So it pays to hang out with the people that created the music, and eat the same food, and watch the same movies, and kind of just understand where the emotion comes from,
mm,
and see if you can find it in yourself.
absolutely. Um,
So yeah, go ahead.
I was actually just going to ask you, being in New York, and you said, like, I feel like moving to a new place where you don't necessarily have a community, even if it's just your friends, but you don't have a musical community necessarily. Like, what was your process of kind of creating like that space, or creating a community of musicians that you felt you could grow from, if you did at all? And like, I know you talked a little bit about the jam sessions. What places were you going, even if you didn't know people? Like, what places were you frequenting during that time?
So to make it even harder for myself, I kind of, I came to New York to play and develop my jazz skills.
Hmm.
And within 6 months, I kind of shifted my focus towards other kinds of music.
Okay.
Not that jazz is bad; it's phenomenal. But I fell in love with the R&B, soul, and gospel music, mainly because of two places. There used to be a place called the Village Underground in New York,
Mhm.
which used to hold a weekly open mic. Half the band at this joint was a former Whitney Houston's band. They knew every song known to men, and the place had a great sound equipment. It just felt like you jumped inside of a record. It was just so good. I've never seen anything like it. That was the first place, and the second place was a relatively small church in Brooklyn. Both places had one person in them, and that person is Corey Henry, the organist.
Yeah.
Um, he grew up playing at a church called the Greater Temple of Praise, which is the church I'm talking about. It's in Brownsville, New York, Brooklyn. And then, because Shedrick Mitchell was actually on tour with Whitney, who is the house organist and music director, or who was the music director of this open mic, Corey was in his place. So he played organ. So I had every Sunday was like a Corey Henry Sunday for me
Yeah.
for at least 4 years consistently.
Not a bad place.
So not at all. It was a constant reminder of what I'm probably not gonna achieve. However, I couldn't stop myself from just being around and hanging around. So, and Corey was the one who actually forced me to move to New York. He said, "Hey," he heard me after one of the first services. Um, I came up to him, and obviously, of course, I'm the only person looking different than everybody else in there. So they know I'm there. The congregation is like 40 people, maybe more. But I come up to him to the pulpit and start talking. He's like, "What do you do?" I said, "I play organ." He goes, well, why don't you play something? I'm like, oh, dang. All right. So I played like a straight ahead thing, like a jazz thing, which I haven't heard them play during the service. Of course, they were playing church music,
Right.
and they loved it. So I, that's how I would, that was my foot in, or
Right.
loved it. They liked it. It was cool. I was at home in that musical style, so it was okay. And then I kept coming to the services, and one Sunday morning or afternoon, Corey drove me home because I didn't live too far, and he said, however you set yourself up, just make sure you stay in New York. It's worth it. Just hang around. It'll pay off. Even if you have to do a bartender, do whatever, work at a bar, but just stay so you can hang around the musicians. And I did, and it paid off because now, I mean, before Corona happened, I've been touring with Gregory Porter, which is
Right.
amazing.
Among so many others, just you have such a wide range of experience collaborating with artists of all different genres. And how do you feel like you really built up like a diverse set of chops where you're able to move through so many different genres and collaborate with artists from different soundscapes?
Well, um, this is probably not the answer that you're looking for, but I needed to pay rent and eat some food.
Mhm.
So I had no other choice. Um, I've it took me a minute, but over time I've become like, for a while I've become like the first or second sub to be called in New York.
Mm,
Because even though I was not the first call, I became known for learning the music, preparing well enough, um, showing up on time, and looking and smelling halfway decent. So, which you know, I knew I wasn't really ahead of the game musically. I didn't have the repertoire. Everybody in New York knows, like all the cats that play, they know so much music. I mean, church, of course, but most of those people grow up in church, so it kind of comes naturally.
yeah.
But with other styles, club dates and stuff like that, cats know a lot of music, and keyboard players know all the parts, and it's a lot of material. So I had to. A lot of these singers that call you, they never tell you what they're gonna play. It's just like, I just sing songs. So it was a lot of guessing work, and I had to kind of learn more things than we performed then. But that was the only way for me to stay at least on that second tier. So I had to go the extra mile. I knew I didn't have the repertoire. I knew I didn't have the feel and the chops at that time. So I had to go the extra mile somewhere else.
Mm,
I would always learn the music really well, show up early, just have the other things together. So I became a pleasant person to work with, and easy. Just make it easy. When someone hires you, they they just need they just need you to make it easy for them,
yeah, and to be consistent.
to be consistent, and just kind of solve their problems, basically help them, just help them make the gig go well. So I
Right.
tried, I worked on that, and as a side effect, I was able to learn all the music, and get the feel. You kind of just you kind of rubs off. So that's pretty much what it was. I became the guy that you could call last minute. I was always available because I had no work. I would always learn the music, show up, and it was, it was never bad. In the beginning, it was pretty bad. Started I started going on stage at this open mic at Village Underground, and the first 5 times I went up, it was a disaster because they would call a song, I wouldn't know it, try to hear my way through it, fail,
Mm,
and it's the most awful thing when like a group of people that know the song kind of look at you, vibe you, they let you know that you don't know what you're doing. So went back home, cried for a little bit, then learned the music,
learn
and then
music,
tried the following week.
yeah, and jump back in.
And
Uh,
it paid off. The Wu-Tang gig happened um because of this word of mouth. A friend of mine, this phenomenal producer, Butter, Jizza, the creative genius behind Wu-Tang, called him and said, "Hey, I have a gig in Coney Island. Can you put together a band for me?" And this was a couple of days before the show. So Butter knew he could call me and I would learn the music. So he called me. Now, mind you, I have never really been deeply into hip hop. So I don't know that. I don't know their music that well. I had to make charts.
Mm.
This was like the first and only hip hop gig ever being side read. But I had to make charts because that was the only way for just to
For
kind of
you
cue the
to-
lyrics, make a little cheat sheet. When he says this, that's when I switch the sound. And 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 so it was his show, and basically all of Wu Tang showed up. So
That's pretty awesome.
it was pretty cool. It
That's
was a
a
lot of
pretty
fun.
awesome first gig to have for in the hip hop genre. That's pretty legendary, I think.
Not bad at all. Not
Not
bad at
bad
all.
at all.
Yeah.
What would you recommend in terms of I know that it's like you talked about, being consistent, really knowing the music, um, you know, like showing up on time, showing up early, even like being some of the ingredients for being the person that people call on and look to for these opportunities. But what would you recommend for young people who are looking to go after opportunities, especially during this time in a competitive industry, whether that has to do with production or sound engineering or actually getting the gig and being there in person? Because I know that there's a lot of different ways that people are still showcasing performances right now. You think about like the Roots picnic being online. Production value is changing the way that we're seeing it presented. But how would you recommend people of our students' age go after those opportunities and position themselves?
Well, I can only say what I did, and it ended up working out for me, which was um, I knew I had no choice, so I was open to just about any type of gig. So that's the first thing. Even though I knew I didn't want it, like I've played for years, I played weddings.
Mm,
It's not something. That work can actually suck the soul out of you. But I had no other choice, and I found some positive in it. I found out I had to learn a lot of keyboard parts, a lot of non-keyboard parts, horn parts, string parts, which then later on helped me in production because you have to learn a repertoire of hundreds of songs
mhm.
ranging from the 50s all the way to the top 40 today. And so just find something positive in every gig, even though if it's something that you don't want to primarily do.
Yeah.
Um, Chances are that someone else who does not also want to be on that gig is there, who has a phenomenal gig somewhere else.
Mm,
And because they see you, you're a nice person to vibe with, you're a good musician, and you've prepared, they'll call you for the other thing that actually might be the thing that you want to do. So this is saying if you hang out at the barbershop long enough, you'll get a haircut.
right.
So just kind of just
No, you never know
if
when the opportunity is gonna come.
if you identify something that you want, it's not a bad idea to kind of hang out in that circle, even though you're not doing the particular thing that you want to do at that time.
Right.
This is how I ended up playing at Corey Henry's church for a year. When he started touring, the bishop came to me and was like, "Hey, can you do it?" I said, "Time wise, yes. Musically, I don't know." So that's when the bishop he was just like, "Well, just come here a couple times during the week, and I'll teach you the songs, and we'll get the flow." And he was kind of gracious enough to spend time with me to get my skill kind of up to the level where he needed it, or at the minimum that he needed it. So it took a good year or two of just hanging out. I didn't do it with the purpose of playing there. I did it because they just played so well and the church is so great. It just felt so good that I wanted to be around.
Yeah. Well,
So that I don't know what people should do today because it's a slightly different environment. I mean, it is
yeah, just
today,
slightly.
but this is what I did, and it ended up working out in the form of um, you know gaining the gig with Gregory, and that took some time too. And then having kept it for 4 years.
Yeah, and that's a great gig to have held down for so long. And I'm sure you've had some amazing, amazing experiences working with him and that band because it's an extraordinary ensemble of musicians. Seriously, um,
And thankfully, we all like each other, so
which
it's a
is
cool
even
hang.
better. Which is even better. Liking the people that you're working with and touring with is a blessing for sure. Uh, I have one more question I want to ask before I kind of pass it over to the students to ask direct questions to you. What has virtual collaboration looked like during this time, or how have you been practicing and creating during this time? Where maybe you're working on solo projects or you're figuring out how to collaborate with various groups or continue working during this time. What does that look like for you?
Okay, so let me just preface this whole segment by saying this time really sucks for all of us. Really bad. I can't wait for things to change. I really can't. Mainly because one of the last serious money that there was in music was in live performance.
Hmm.
There's no recorded music sales. Everything is streaming.
Yep.
Everything is on YouTube. You can complain about it all you want, but that's just how it is. It's a new era. Um, so it really sucks for everybody, and I think we're gonna feel it for a long time as an industry as a whole. Um, Virtual collaboration for me has been mostly studio work. People have sent me tracks, and I did things for them. I sometimes initiate it too. I write music, produce some tracks. Actually, I have a call with this girl from London after this. We're gonna try to work on something. Um, the two things that I did recently that really brought me a lot of joy. There's this group called the Baylor Project. Marcus Baylor,
Mhm.
former Yellow Jackets drummer, and his wife, who's a phenomenal singer. They did a Corona song called "Sit On Down," and they actually this is how it came about. They did a challenge. They recorded a video of just Marcus playing a tambourine and Gene playing a piano and singing the song, and they said, "Hey, do your own version." And when I heard it, and this was one of those times, and to all those most of these people that I see on the screen are younger than me. Guys, this is the worst thing to do. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you go to the bathroom, don't pick up your phone and look on Instagram. It's like the worst thing you can do. So I did the thing that I'm telling everybody not to do, and this popped up. This was the first thing that popped up, and immediately when it played, I started hearing an arrangement. So I had to wake up at like 5 in the morning and started putting the thing together without even telling them, hey, I want to work on this song. No, they did a challenge, so I posted a video, a 1 minute clip, but it had drums on it, it had horns on it, it had bass, organ, it had everything, all the instruments that I imagined. I just put it to it, which sucked because they didn't do it to a click. So try programming a drum track to something that kind of shifts like this. It was tricky. So I managed to make it feel good, and Marcus calls me like within 2 hours. He's like, "Yo, you got to do this whole song." So I'm like, "Okay, sure." So then for like 2 days, because again, you can't really get no cat, so I had to program horns, which is super hard. Then I did the whole track, sent them stems. They sent it to a bass player, to a guitar player, and then Gene laid the final vocals over it, and it ended up being a nice thing. They actually made T-shirts with the hashtag Sit On Down. It was like a whole movement for a while. A lot of people did remixes. It was great. So again, I kind of went the extra mile, but this was again, I had no intention of producing a song for that. I just had so much fun working on this video,
Right.
which is kind of what we're all doing now. Is like there's no money in anything, so we're just doing a lot of things
For
for fun,
joy.
for joy. Then I did a small thing for this other artist who I love so much. She's a dear friend of mine, Avery Sunshine. She's
Mm.
phenomenal. She did a she did another song honoring the victims of the coronavirus. It's called "How Will You Remember Me." Um, so they called me and said, "Hey, can you lay down organ and whatever else you want?" So I did couple pars, and then they put it together, and so these are like the most notable things that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's funny because I'm looking at it right now. I made myself actually a list of things that need to happen. It's probably all in Czech, so you won't be able to read it. But this is and it's kind of, ghetto on a piece of paper. I should make it digital and make it like a clickable thing. But it's a list of things that need to happen every day,
Mm.
and it says 10-minute warm up, 45-minute tricks, 45 minutes solo organ practice, at least 1 hour of writing, creating music, producing, and then a couple other things: meditate, do something physical, just to keep some kind of a schedule, because otherwise you'll just end up watching YouTube all day, which is sometimes great too, because there's so many great things. If you're watching meaningful things, if you're watching some great musicians,
Right.
it's fantastic.
Yeah,
But
it's also super important to have like some things that you have like a practice regimen or just stuff that you kind of keep yourself accountable to. Oh, I think I lost you.
idea is, this will pass at some point, it'll end, and hopefully we'll slowly jump back into our regular life. So my idea is, when that does happen, I'm trying to be an upgraded version of myself. So, and it's hard. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes, especially here, we have some great beers. So, friends call you, it's like, hey, let's go out. It's sunny outside. All the restaurants have opened here. Basically, this place is very safe. Not too many people died, so things are recovering rather quickly here. So, sometimes you go out and hang out, and but even then, when I come back home at like midnight, I try to stay up and do a couple of those things from the list, so I don't feel like a total loser for that day. And just try to get a few things done every day. That's how I'm trying to look at it. This is a rare time in everybody's lives. It's a rare time in my life where I can actually focus on these things. Because when we start touring again, the focus is largely going to be on what am I going to eat and how many hours can I sleep.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's important to note, like, productivity is going to fluctuate. It's a really it's a really unique time, and making sure we're prioritizing doing stuff for joy is so important in finding joy in the everyday. So, yeah, that's awesome. It's good to hear about your routine and like how you're implementing that to prepare for the outdoors, which hopefully will get out there soon. But in the meantime, shed on.
Yep, that's
um,
kind of the idea.
yeah. So I'm going to open up the floor to the students. If you guys have any questions, words of advice you want to hear, anything really, the floor is yours. You can write in the chat, and you can also, if you'd like, you can actually just ask the question aloud directly to Andre. But either way, just ask anything that you'd like to hear about from him while we have him here for the next 10 minutes.
Hi, I have a question.
Hey.
Also, just first of all, like, my family's from Eastern Europe. I was born here. It's just your English, amazing, better than like every family friend I have.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
I want to ask, because I'm also a piano player with like a background in like playing straight ahead, and like I have played like a bunch of like R&B stuff, but I've never really been able to like figure out how to transition to playing organ like authentically and correctly. And I was wondering what your process was, like going from one to the other and like learning that instrument.
Yep, those are two different beasts. Well, there's a few basic things that I can tell you that you can follow and that'll probably improve it, but a lot of this has to do with really just listening very, very carefully and trying to emulate things. Um, if you choose to do so, look on my the, Samantha has posted a Instagram thing. Look on my Instagram. The last thing that I posted is a video of me playing a hymn called Old Rugged Cross, and it took me it's a 4-minute video, and it took me 3 days to put it together, because I just kept recording it. It sucked. It was like all these little details that were not right. So And I would always compare it to, the real cats, and it was just like, this doesn't feel good. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to. You can learn the notes, you can learn the chords, your timing could be right, but to get the feel right, that that it sucked, and a lot of people get discouraged because it just really sucks, especially if you're used to sounding good doing one particular thing. You hate that you suck doing the other thing, and so then you just don't want to do it anymore. But you have to push through it. You have to, and record yourself and A/B it to the real thing, to how you do want to sound, and that'll get you a lot of you'll get a lot of answers by listening to your own recording, because you've heard enough music, I assume, to have the taste, to have the acquired taste. So you kind of are your own critic, your own teacher. The concrete things that I'm going to tell you is, do not lift your fingers when you play organ, unless you're trying to do something really choppy, really funky, and rhythmic. Don't lift your fingers. If you're playing slower things, just. Dr. Lonnie Smith has told me once, you got to play the organ like if it had snot in it. It just has to be like everything's glued together. Everything's real patty. And that's one thing that took me further, because it's technically much harder than playing, things one by one, because we're used to, on piano, we're used to the sustain pedal that kind of connects things together. You don't have that on organ, and it's hard sometimes. If you want to connect two chords, you run out of fingers, because two-thirds of your fingers are holding a chord, and then you need to transition into another chord where two-thirds of your fingers are holding a chord. So it's tricky. You got to find ways. You got to find your own ways to make it sound the right way. And then I would suggest, and this probably is true about any instrument and any style, just take one small thing and learn it identical to how you're hearing it from the record or from the YouTube or from whatever. It's a lot harder than it seems, but you will learn so much in the process. These are things that they're a little hard to describe, because a lot of times you need to figure out your own way of getting to that point. But like I said, I would say connect the things as much as you can. Try to watch some organ players physically, how they're doing it, because the movements are different than piano movements. And the answer is always in the music. It's all out there. Um, yeah, I mean, learn the drawbar settings. That helps. That's a huge part of it. And you can go online. There's countless online forums of crazy geeky organ players that just describe the things. You can watch some YouTube videos. That's how I've learned my organ settings. Is I just watched um YouTube, and kind of like I would just pause the video and kind of just look where their drawbars were. Um, like I mentioned before, I had the privilege of hanging out with Corey a lot, so I would just kind of look how he's got it set up. Um, and just kind of borrow all these things from everywhere you can. It's a good idea to have a lot of information sources, and then kind of put it all together. But the general big difference between piano and organ is, on organ everything is connected. It's almost like you're hitting the next thing before you let go of the thing that you're currently doing. I hope that helps.
Awesome. We have a bunch of other questions coming in. One of them is, how do you separate your life from your music? You can see them coming in the chat.
Okay, yeah, let's see. Okay, how do you separate your life from your music? I don't. It's it's one thing. I can't. Um, and and I should, and you should too. Because if you want to have a normal life, you need to put a cap on it, because otherwise you go nuts. So it's a balancing act. But then I do it for too long, and I'm going crazy because I love music so much. So you can't really deny yourself. If you love music so deeply, then you can't try to force it. You can't try to forcefully separate other parts of it. You just modify the rest of your life so it fits within the music life. That's been my approach, and it's somewhat worked. Yeah. Do you feel like COVID has strengthened your joy for music? It has brought me back to the basics, which is listen to some music and it'll give you pleasure. So I've listened to so much music since I always listened to music, but now it was like more it's been like more focused listening because there's not much else to do, and I'm constantly looking for little things that I would like to learn. So it's listening with that open ear and try to reach for those little things. Um, I the last time I did this kind of seriously was when I got the gig with Gregory Porter, and I realized I was going to have a specific role because there's also a piano player, so I need to be able to play organ in a way that doesn't really interfere with what he's doing and what they're doing. However, I need to be heard. So it's figuring out how to fatten things up, but at the same time, kind of put some spice on top of it. I went all scientific. I started recording the gigs, and then when the cats were sleeping on the plane, I was listening to the gig from last night. I was just like, this was good. This sucked. This was all right. And I kind of modeled my own approach on Billy Preston, because Billy Preston he was known to do this in Ray Charles' band and Aretha Franklin's band in the Beatles. He was phenomenal at this whole, like, I'm gonna stay out of the way, yet you're gonna know at all times that I'm here. And so yeah,
I
listen
think
to
we have
music.
one question. So I think someone raised their hand. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hello. First of all, it's a pleasure to meet you. And my question was, could you give us an overview of what your creative process is like and how you apply what you hear and desire to the music that you're working on?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. The creative process sometimes can be pretty annoying. It can. I'll go back to the example of waking up in the middle of the night. A week ago, I had a dream, and it was a song. I was playing. I was writing a song, and I woke up still having that song in my head and hearing it in my head. And from experience, I know that there's no such thing as I'll remember this in the morning. No, that it's just you have like 3 minutes, and then so I had to fire up all this crap and just record because I heard a full arrangement, like bass part and all that. So I had to record like 10 seconds of it so I can actually remind myself in the morning. So sometimes I don't have a specific way of doing it. A lot of times I start with the drum beat. If I've decided that I need to write some music, I start with the drum beat, because if the drum beat is not, and this is a terrible thing to say, but when I started studying production, I realized that the only two things that people listen to is the drum beat and the vocals, then maybe the bass line. Everything else is like for us, for like all these, however many people we have on the Zoom call, we enjoy all the other stuff. Regular people, not really. I mean, by regular people, I mean non-musicians. So I try to make sure that it's as as groovy as possible. It makes me feel something. It makes me physically feel something. And then the melody is king in all the songs that I've loved and that I think are great songs. The melody is always super strong, and I always try to imagine if I walked on a bridge and there was not even a singer, there was a saxophone player playing a song. Would I give him $5 because I recognized the song just from the melody line? So I try to spend a lot of time on melody and on the drum beat and on the relationship of those two. And so you kind of have the top and the bottom, and then everything else tends to fall in place if you've listened to enough enough music. And how do I apply what I'm hearing into my own creativity? Um, that can sometimes be, in my case, very indirect. just spend a lot of time listening to a lot of things, and you have no choice but all that music kind of catalyzing into what it is that you're doing. If you're sensitive enough and open, if you're paying attention, that in my case it happens kind of naturally, because otherwise you're just plagiarizing. I'm trying to not just, oh, I like this, let me do it in my own music. That it's not that, you know, I don't think that's that cool, especially in today's environment where everybody likes to sue everybody over a vibe. So yeah, I hope that answered the question.
I think we have time for a couple more. This is a good question. How do you refocus yourself when you find yourself getting off track or doing something else? I think we can all relate to that right now.
There was a time when I had little, what you call them, sticky notes, to remind me to get back on track. Just literally, just when my eyes landed on that thing, oh snap! All right, I'm doing something completely useless. I need to be doing that. One thing. Another thing, I like to set. My list has specific times. I like to set timers, and the timer, I have it somewhere visible. So when I find myself distracted doing something that I should not be doing, the timer reminds me that the timer is running, and during these, and I choose relatively short intervals, 45 minutes or 30 minutes, but during that time I should be doing that one focused thing, and then I can take a little break, do some online useless crap, and then I set another timer, and that kind of keeps me in check. And sometimes I can't, sometimes I fail at refocusing. It's hard. Sometimes I take a walk. I've literally taken some walks, just 2 minutes, just to kind of clear my head, come back to the main thing. Because the main the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you just need to it's just that your brain telling you you need to take a break. You need to just let it breathe.
Yeah.
The last question I'm going to ask is, would you say versatility is important or focusing on one genre? I know Corey plays in church and also has a history with Snarky Puppy. That is why I ask.
Well, everybody's different. So while for someone that might be the way to go, and it definitely was the way to go for me, but again, it was because I needed money to pay rent and to buy food. So I had no other choice but learning a lot of things. My two heroes, which is Corey and then Shedrick Mitchell, who played for just about everybody, ranging from Aretha to Whitney, Stevie Wonder, Kenny Garrett. He is a master of convincing you that the thing that you're hearing him do is the only thing he does. Like he's gonna play a classical recital, and you'll feel like all he does is classical piano, but then he'll play a church service on a B3, and you'll think, oh, he's the only thing he does is church, and then he'll play a pop gig, et cetera, et cetera. So it's something. My answer is a little jaded because I kind of fell in love with that concept, and it's something that I want. Versatility is it important? If you're gonna be a solo artist, it does not have to be. There are examples of. I mean, I know Michael Brecker was able to play in any kind of scenario, and then he was his own artist. I heard Chaka Khan. Before she became Chaka Khan, she was a background singer. A lot of people recruit from praise teams in churches. So that I think it's a good thing actually, to learning more things. I think it's a good thing even within your own instrument. If by nature you're a soloist, learn the accompaniment part of your instrument. Meaning, if you're a horn player, study some horn parts on famous records and be able to replicate those. Be able to communicate those to your fellow horn players. So if you end up in a situation where there's 5 horn players, but it's a gig with a singer and a band, and it's like a pocket type of gig, no one wants to hear you noodle. So be able to communicate a horn part, teach the section. It'll bring more work to you, and it'll also make you understand how parts work, how it interlocks with the vocals, with with the rest of it. If you're a drummer and your main task is to play pocket and keep time, learn how to solo, because that'll change the way you accompany a soloist. So I would say it's a good thing to actually know how to do more things.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this time, and it was awesome to hear about your journey so far, and all of these nuggets of wisdom. And I'm sure our students are appreciative as well. If they want to stay in touch with you or just want to follow along, is the best place to do that your Instagram? Awesome. So I just dropped that in the chat.
Yep. Instagram is cool.
Awesome. I dropped his Instagram in the chat. So if you guys want to keep in touch and just follow along all the cool things that Andre is going to be doing during this time, it sounds like hopefully we see some more video content. You can go ahead and follow him there. But that concludes our first summer artist series. Thank you, Andre. Thank you to all of our students. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, of course. And as we close out, just know that we're gonna have some information coming your way, students, about getting featured on the City Music Instagram, and kind of giving you the opportunity to create your own video content during this time, and have that highlighted. So stay tuned for that. All right. So bye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.